Today is the day. After years of being stuck behind the nunnery's fortress walls, Sister Joan is ready to break out. There's one tiny problem. She has to fake her own death. Sounds drastic, but her plan is flawless. A lumpy blanket dummy. Because who wouldn't mistake a half-folded linen burrito for a real person, right? Believe it or not, that's not even the dumbest way someone tried to ghost their life. When it comes to cheating the Grim Reaper, or at least pretending to, these non-dead masterminds took it to a whole new level. Want to hear the wildest attempts? Stay tuned for this episode of the Infographics Show. Stupid ways people tried to fake their death. Number 9. Canoe Believe It? John Darwin was an ordinary British man, having worked as a teacher and a prison officer. He was seemingly happily married, and they lived a modest life. But after ambitious real estate purchases, John and his family wound up in debt. John's story seemed to reach a tragic end in 2002 when he went out in his kayak and didn't return. A search found the wreckage of the kayak and Darwin was presumed dead. Well, at least his grieving widow got the life insurance payout to help pay off their debts. Seems a little too convenient, doesn't it? The thing was, John Darwin wasn't very good at playing dead. He was spotted walking around the neighborhood. When a neighbor confronted him, Darwin simply asked the man to keep quiet. In 2004, he even applied for a passport under a fake name and was now in the system. Darwin and his wife moved to Panama, but kept going back home to buy more real estate. By 2007, the walls were closing in, and Darwin decided to return to the UK, pulling the I have amnesia card. No one bought it, surprisingly. Darwin and his wife were charged with insurance fraud, with both serving over 3 years in prison. This next fraudster went a little further in trying to kill himself off. Number 8. Good lawyer, bad actor. William Grote was a prominent attorney in Franklin, Tennessee, who disappeared without a trace in 2008. What followed indicated signs of foul play. His belongings were found in a bag on a random lawn. His car was abandoned in a public park near the water. Cops dredged the water looking for a body, but things got dark when a mysterious caller claimed to have killed him. The missing person case seemed to be turning into a homicide. Meanwhile, Grote was chilling in a Montana hotel. Things went downhill quickly from there. Turns out the killer was Grote himself. He didn't even bother with a fake voice when he made the call. Soon after, he checked into a mental health facility in Arizona, and his scam unraveled. He would return home and plead guilty to fraud charges for trying to defraud his insurance company. Sometimes it doesn't take a financial motive to fake your death, it just takes ego. Number 7. The Final Curtain. Friedrich Gute was a brilliant pianist. In fact, he was one of the best in Austria in both the classical and jazz fields. He won many awards, but there seemed to be a limit to his success. He started to wonder if there was any way he could get more people to pay attention to his skills. Well, there's one thing that always raises an artist's profile, right? By 1999, Gute was a grand veteran in the arts of Austria. He also had a reputation for eccentric stunts and defying conventions. So when his death was announced, people realized how big an impact he had on the music scene. Fans flooded into the Vienna Konzerthaus for a tribute concert, only to see Gute himself stroll on stage. The ultimate mic drop. But he didn't have long to enjoy his new notoriety. The pianist would die less than a month into 2000, leading everyone to wonder if he just wanted to enjoy his own farewell while he still could. This next faker wasn't worried about lying, even to God. Number 7. The Divine Con Job. In the 14th century, times were tough, and many women found refuge in religious orders. These enclosed orders usually offered very simple lives based around prayer and service, but they also offered a level of protection and security that was rare in the Middle Ages. That was the case for one nun, Joan of Leeds in England. There was just one problem: she was bored out of her holy mind. In 1318, she faked an illness and death. The other nuns were clearly into rosaries rather than remedies and declared her dead without a second thought, and now she just had to be buried. Joan quickly constructed a dummy that vaguely resembled her, kind of. This was buried in her place, and she made a break for it. The archbishop accused her of following the way of carnal lust or ditching her vows for a man. What happened to her after was unknown, but the nun on the run's ruse was so poor there is another possibility. Maybe her fellow sisters were in on it the whole time, and the archbishop was the actual target of the con. From the oldest faker to one of the newest, there's another reason to fake death: attention. Number 5. Logging off for good. Back in the early days of the internet, when showing off your cat to strangers was groundbreaking, one blog took center stage. In 1999, a teenager named Casey Nicole captured hearts everywhere by sharing her battle with terminal leukemia. She detailed her illness, even as she went downhill, until April 2001 when her liver began failing. One of her closest online friends wanted to visit her from Europe, but the day before he was due to leave, Casey sadly passed away. At least that was the story. After Casey's heartbreaking death, people started digging into the story. Soon holes started to emerge. Attempts to send condolence gifts didn't go through. There was no funeral or autopsy conducted, and soon people started asking, was Casey real? The answer was no. Casey Nicole was actually an account started by a teenage girl named Kelly Burke. But here is where it gets even weirder. The account had been run by her mother, Debbie Swenson, who had been cosplaying as a teenage girl for years. Lying on the internet isn't a crime, as lots of people prove each day. The FBI ruled that the gifts accepted didn't rise to the level of fraud, so the entire thing turned into a cautionary tale about the perils of believing everything you read on the internet. Not even celebrities are immune from dumb death hoaxes. Number 4. When fiction becomes real life. Ken Kesey was a counterculture icon who moved into the mainstream with his asylum thriller One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest in 1962. Kesey wasn't just known for his blunt writings on crime and drug culture, he lived a wild life, and it caught up with him in 1965 when he was arrested for marijuana possession. Facing prison time, he proceeded to do the only thing that made sense: disappear off the face of the planet. And to do that, he made people think he was dead. Kesey couldn't just disappear. He was a writer after all. He needed to make it captivating. He wrote notes to give police the indication that he was no more. His friends loyal to the cause blanked the FBI. His own father tried to help the police, wanting his son to be straightened out. Meanwhile, Kesey was living it up in Puerto Vallarta. But like any good story, there was a twist. Kesey blew his cover when he crossed the border to party with his friends in San Francisco. He wound up being nabbed and serving 6 months at a work camp. And who would have more reason to disappear than a politician? Number 3. House of Frauds. John Stonehouse was a powerful British politician who was a member of Prime Minister Harold Wilson's cabinet. But with great power comes great opportunity, and Stonehouse turned out to be one of the most corrupt politicians in British history. His close relations with the government of Czechoslovakia led him to becoming a spy. He had previously been accused and acquitted, but in 1974, Stonehouse was overseeing several illegal business operations. With the walls closing in, it was time to do the honorable thing: run. His cunning ploy? Leaving a pair of clothes on a beach in Miami while on vacation. It looked like a tragic accident, and while obituaries were being published, Stonehouse was on a plane to Australia. He transferred massive amounts of money, and soon the police were building a trail. Unfortunately for Stonehouse, they didn't know who he was. They thought he was someone else. The Australian police arrested him on suspicion of being the infamous British fugitive Lord Lucan, who was suspected of murdering a nanny. Stonehouse had to pull down his pants to show he didn't have a distinctive scar. He might have gotten away with it if he didn't later try to apply for a formal British title while in Australia. He would ultimately be extradited and be sentenced to 7 years in prison. This next fugitive might have put more effort into faking his own death and came close to making it the real deal. Number 2. Crash and burn. Marcus Schrenker was living high in 2009. The powerful financial advisor was the owner of 3 companies, but he had been playing fast and loose with his finances and was being sued for over $1 million. Then his wife filed for divorce when he was caught having an affair. His financial advisor license expired and his companies were searched by law enforcement. His life was crumbling around him, and he knew it was time to disappear. He grabbed the money he could take with him and he flew off in a single-engine plane. And then the distress signal came in. Schrenker's plane reportedly suffered a malfunction, causing the windshield to explode. It went down near Birmingham, Alabama, but Schrenker wasn't actually on board. He parachuted out and went on the run. The only problem was his distress call went too well. Military jets had been dispatched and quickly found that the plane was still in flight on autopilot. Schrenker was on the run for several days but would be found camping in the wild with serious self-inflicted wounds. Medics saved his life, and Schrenker would live to see trial, where he would be sentenced to 10 years in prison for serious financial crimes. This next guy dug a hole and just kept on digging. Number 1. From grave robbing to grave mistake. When the Burnett County Sheriff's Department responded to a vehicle fire in 2004, they were horrified by what they found. A terrible car crash had led to a massive blaze, and the unfortunate person inside had burned to death. The damage was so serious that it was hard to find information, but the car belonged to Clayton Daniels, and the body was his as well. His wife, Molly, had called the police and reported him missing, and items in the car were tied to him. It seemed to be an open and shut case. Instead, it turned out to be one of the most shocking crimes in the area's history. An autopsy revealed no smoke damage in the lungs, meaning the victim was dead before the fire. And when lighter fluid was found in the wreckage, things started to click. Daniels had recently been sentenced to a jail term after pleading guilty to a sex crime. So like any stable couple, he and his wife decided to steal a body from a cemetery and stage a crash. He would be in the clear and his wife could cash in on the life insurance policy. But where was Clayton? Well, Molly had a new boyfriend who looked a lot like Clayton. The con couple were arrested, with both getting lengthy prison sentences, with bonus time for stealing a corpse. They might have gotten away with it if Molly hadn't jumped back into the dating pool. Which story blew your mind? Drop it in the comments. Want more wild tales? Check out Dumb Ways to Die, Florida edition, or watch this video instead.